Hello students, in this video uh, we are going to learn how to specify constraints in SQL. So constraints are rules or regulations imposed on data to ensure their integrity and correctness. We may have constraints on individual columns. For example, this column is a primary key, or this columns must be not null, and so on. Or we may have constraints on a table or constraints on multiple tables. Let's take an example. We have this create command for creating a book table, create table book, and these are the attributes we are going to create for the book table. The first attribute or column ISBN, the second is title, the third is price, and the edition for this price. These are the four attributes. We tell that ISBN is of type character 15, so it must be a string of length 15 characters, and we specify a constraint that this is the primary key. So this is the first type of constraints on columns, which is the primary key, which means that any two rows in this book table must take different values for this ISBN attribute. So no two attributes, or no two rows can have the same value for the ISBN column in this table. Also, we have the title attribute of type variable character 50, which means that it can hold values. It can hold strings of length up to 50, and we specify a constraint called unique. This means that the title attribute or title column is a unique, must take unique values, the same as the primary key, but it is not chosen as the primary key. So unique means that the title attribute or title column is a candidate key, okay, which means that any two rows cannot take the same value for the title column, okay, but we don't choose the title as the primary key. We choose the ISBN to be the primary key and the title as the candidate key. To tell SQL that title is a candidate key, we put unique here. So this is the second type of constraint on columns. So we have the primary key and the unique. Next, we have the price column or price attribute of type number 5, 2, which means that all values must be a number of at most 5 digits. Two of these 5 are at the right of the point or or after the point. Okay. Now we are going to put a check constraint here. We put check and open parentheses and put a price positive. This means that any value that must be stored in this price must be a positive value. This is correct because any book must have a price that this price must be positive. It cannot have a price that is negative. Okay, so we put this check command here that checks for any value to be positive. This is the third type of constraint on columns. So we have the primary key, then we have the unique, then we have the check constraint. Okay, and then we have the addition attribute or column that is of type number 2. This means that all values must be a number of 2 digits. At most 2 digits. It can be 1 and it can be 2. And we give it a default value of 1. This is the fourth type of constraint, which is default. This gives any column the default value if not specified while inserting on the book table. So if we have a book to be inserted in this table and this book doesn't specify the edition value, then it will take by default the value 1. Okay, and we put a check on the addition that it must be positive. So we have here the default constraint and the check constraint on the addition attribute. We have another attribute called the publisher name for this book, that is of type variable character 30, which means that it can hold values of variable strings of length 30. And in this attribute or this column references the attribute called name in the publisher table. So this attribute name publisher name, here we specify the type of this attribute variable character 30, and here we specify another constraint called references. References which column, the name column in which table in the table publisher. So this means that all values that must be stored in the publisher name must uh, must must be linked to a value saved in the publisher table in the name column. So this is the fifth type of constraints called references. So we have the primary key constraint, the unique constraint, the check constraint, the default constraint, and we have the references constraint. So we have constraints, and also we have the type constraint. This is a constraint for each type. Okay, so all of them are constraints. So to summarize, the constraints on individual columns are type constraints, uh, uh, which means that the values must be of the given type, and also we have the not null constraint, means that no null value can be taken for this column. We have the unique constraint, which specifies alternate or secondary keys, as we say, the candidate key. For example, we have the department name column that is of type variable character 15 and it must be unique. This means that the department name is a candidate key or secondary key, but it is not chosen as the primary key. Also unique means that no identical non-null values. If we have two values that are non-null, they must be not identical. Also we have the primary key constraint, which specifies one or more attributes that make up the primary key of a relation. So it specifies one attribute or more, or two or three, that make up the primary key of this relation. Also primary key means that no null value and no identical values. So you cannot store null value in the primary key attribute, and you can't store identical value in another row. For example, the department number is of type integer and it is a primary key. This means that we cannot store null value in the department number, and no two rows can have the same value for the department number column. We have also the check constraint definition, which means that the values must satisfy the check condition. For example, if we have the department number is of type integer and we put a constraint, so here is the type constraint, and here you put not null constraint. That means that this column must be not null, and we put a check constraint in order to check that the department number must be positive and the department number must be less than 21. So any value inserted into the table for this column must be positive, because we use check department number positive, and the department number must be less than 21, and we end our command with semicolon. So these are the types of constraints we can have for the individual columns. So here is a summarization for the syntax for column definition. So here we put the column name, then the type or the data type for this column, and here these are optional values, or these are optional. You can put and you can't put. You can, and you, if you want, and if you don't want, you can not put them. So here we have the column name and the data type, and here the default value, and here are the constraints. Okay, the constraints must be in this format. The name of the you put constraint, then the name of the constraint, and then you put not null, or not is optional, so you can put not null or put null alone, or you can put the check condition, or you can put it unique, or primary key, or references. References what column? The column, the name of the column from the following table, and you can put on delete cascade and on update cascade. These are optional. This what does this means? If you put on delete cascade and you was using the references constraint. For example, if you have a column that references another column from this table, okay, type. For example, if the other column, if the other value on the other column was deleted, what should I do? On delete, I want to cascade. Also delete this one. This means that also delete this one. On update cascade, if the other columns, or if the reference column was updated, then also update the column that references that. Okay, here we have another example for creating the table enrollment. We specify these columns or these attributes: SSN, course number, section number, grade. These are the attributes we are using, and SSN of type character 9, and it references the students, so it references a column in the students, because SSN is a foreign key, so we put references students. And here we have course number type variable character 7, and it must be not null, and also the section number of type number 2, and it must be not null. Also the grade attribute, which is a type character, and here we put the constraint primary key we chosen. The primary key chosen is the SSN, in addition to the course number, in addition to the section number. So the SSN, in addition to the course number, in addition to the section number, are chosen to be the primary key. And also we specify a foreign key, which is the course number, and the section number are a foreign key which references the section table, because both these attributes, which are course number and section number, are found in the section table. Okay, so we put foreign key these two attributes, then reference